Hey guys, what's up? I'm back, and sorry I haven't made a video in a while. I really haven't had a lot of time, because I've had a lot of schoolwork and stuff. But, so yesterday I did have, some time to go, and actually I went to locals with one of my friends again, and, well, right before I realized that I didn't have any decks that I really wanted to play. I mean, I could have played my Glad Beast, but last time I went there I didn't do too good. So I decided to throw together a combination of three of my favorite archetypes of all time: Fluffals, Artifacts, and Zoodiacs. And yes, I do love Zoodiacs, of course, because I even splashed them in my Glads. And I really do think Konami should bring, you know, at least Broad Bull back to one. Like, keep Trident Band, just, come on, give me a Broad Bull, please. That would be really nice. Speaking of that, yo, Konami, when's the new ban list coming out? Come on, honestly. Like, I think it's like, the 29th of January, still no ban list. So, I'm just assuming they're skipping over January. They're probably going to do it in the first few, days of February, when they see how Extreme Forces affected the meta. But, so you may have, seen a deck rather similar to this, called, HAT, or HAT, which stands for Hand, Artifact, Trap Tricks. Basically revolves around three separate archetypes, if you can, I mean, I guess you can consider Hand an archetype. But basically, I'm not talking about hand traps, I'm talking about Hand, as in Fire Hand, Ice Hand. It was actually, like, a really good splashable engine, I think a few years ago, like in the Zexal era. People used it all the time. Oh man, I miss the Zexal era. But, basically, it also had artifacts, which I am using, and that's for a very good reason. Artifacts are absolutely amazing. And finally, Trap Tricks, so basically, they just negate all of your opponent's monster summons. It's great. But I more or less got inspired to build, what I call a hybrid deck out of that. And I call this F.A.Z, or F.A.Z. And I really enjoyed building this. I did spend, a reasonable amount of time at locals, because, turns out we had, like, another probably hour before it started, because the tourney started at 2 and we got there at like 1. And honestly, I'm surprised that they didn't run out of Extreme Forces sneak peeks, but I did get to buy them. I didn't get anything too good. I did get that Floodgate monster, I forgot what it's called, but basically 2000 attack, 2000 offense, and your opponent can only activate, or well, players can only activate monster effects up to the number of monster types, like Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, etc. Alright, sorry, I'm ranting. Let's get right into this deck profile. I've spent way too long talking. Alright, so, yeah. And, I also finally got my account verified, so that's nice. So I don't have to worry about the 15-minute mark anymore. And also, I did put together a side deck for this, which you'll see in a little bit. So, to start off, let's start with the Fluffals. So, we got Triple Dog. This searches out all of your combo pieces, and I've got a relatively small Fluffal engine. Well, I mean, it's like, it takes up about 1/3 of the deck, but that sounds about right, maybe a bit more than 1/3. So, Fluffal Dog, it searches all your combo pieces. It's key for your combo with Baron Wings. Basically, this, just having Baron Wings in your hand, it'll get you to 2 draws and then a free search of a Fluffal. It's an awesome combo. It's basically the soul of this deck. It's this deck's most efficient drawing mechanism, I guess. The Fluffal engine that I'm playing, it's basically to just like thin the deck out a lot and like get all of your Fluffals out really fast. So yeah, next I'm playing one Owl. I'm playing one Owl mainly because I'm only playing one Polymerization. Yes, I don't fuse that often in this deck. I mainly go with the Zoodiac route, with some face downs, which are artifacts, but I don't fuse that often. But when I do, I only have, well, 2 main targets. I mean, it depends on if you count Sabertooth, so yeah, I'll get to that in a second. So, yeah, I don't use that often, really. I'm probably going to cut it for some artifacts. So yeah, next we have one Penguin. I would cut Penguin completely, except he's good for making the one generic rank 4 that I have. So, which is, what's his name? Karen Gorgon. I'll get to him in a second also. But, yeah, I mean, if I do fuse, chances are I'm going to be using him for the draw 2, discard 1 effect, which is really good with a bunch of cards, because, again, deck thinning, and, you know, yeah, you get to choose what to keep in your hand. The last of the monsters is Edgem Sabers. Yes, I'm playing no copies of Edgem Chain. That's because I don't have any Frightford cards, and I really don't need any Frightford cards, because they're all pretty irrelevant. Like, there's Fright for Fusion, but that makes you banish from your grave, and most of the time I'm going to be using the effects of my Fluffal Wings and Bear. You know, I'm going to be banishing from the grave a lot with Wings. And either way, it's not good because they have to be on your field also, and most of the time you're just going to keep them in your hand. But the one Edgem Sabers, because the 2 fusion monsters that I can directly summon are Tiger and Kraken. So yeah, don't really play him that often. He does combo off pretty well with this next card, Toy Vendor. Probably, I would say this card is probably the second best card of the deck. The reason I say second best is because the Zoodiacs have a card that's even better, which we will get to, and I can't wait to, because there's so many cool things you can do with it. But, yeah, Toy Vendor, this card gets you so many draws, so many searches, because neither of its effects are hard once per turn, so all you have to do is get multiples of Toy Vendor, and you will, trust me, you're probably going to get at least 2 out in one turn. In fact, I've gotten out all 3 Toy Vendors, and triggered like 5 effects, 3 of their second effects, and 2 of their first effects. Toy Vendor's insane, basically. It's awesome, because, you know, no hard ones per turn, so that's always really nice. Next, the 1 Poly, pretty irrelevant. I'm playing 3 copies of Instant Fusion. I only have 1 target in my extra deck, and that's Sheep, so I think I'm going to cut at least 1 Instant Fusion, so that I can also add some more artifacts to my deck, so yeah. That's it for the Fluffals. Let's move right into artifacts. 1 Moral Talk, I'd play more, but it's at 1. I would definitely max it out if I could. It's great. You can disrupt your opponent a lot. It's just amazing. Next we have Double Scythe. Scythe is great, but I would usually end up siding him out against decks that don't use the extra deck that much, like Pure True Draco, for example. I did play someone with True Draco Invoked, and I sided him out Game 2 because they actually didn't use any of the Invoked engine Game 1. But I really regretted that because Scythe would have seriously helped me go against him. And the last of the artifacts, I'm playing Double Lancia. This artifact does not get anywhere near the respect and credit it deserves. It's an artifact hand trap, basically. You can tribute it from your hand or your field, and basically neither player can banish cards for the rest of the turn. That I actually didn't side out against the guy playing True Dracos. I don't know what I was thinking, but it really helped that I accidentally, kept it in. Because if you play Lancia, it just shuts down Invocation completely. Like, the second I saw him normal summon Aliaster, I just, chain Lancia, and he basically could do nothing for the rest of his turn because he used his normal summon, and I think he had bricked pretty badly, too. The last of the artifact cards, we got Triple Sanctum. Probably the card that, I don't know. I wouldn't say the card that I use the most often, but the card that I resolved the most often, because your opponent usually used a bunch of resources to, well, or some resources at least, to pop it. But I definitely resolved that a lot because I used it during the standby phase most of the time because I didn't want to risk them having enough resources to negate the activation of Sanctum. So, Sanctum, bring out your Scythe, and that's basically game against a deck like, say, Fluffals. They can't do anything. And that's also basically game against 6 Samurais, who depend on the extra deck, and I did play 6 Samurai player, and it did not go well for me. They got some crazy loop where they had 2 of the continuous spells, and then one of that, I think it's called Shen's Dojo or something. No, Gateway of the Six. So, moving on to the Zoodiacs. Sorry, I'm ranting, but Zoodiac Rapier, I'd play him at 3, but he's at 1. Really good card. You can summon him, get any Zoov out of your deck, put it in the grave, and then when you go into Tiger Mortar, you can grab your Zoov from the grave and swap it for one of your own units, so that's always really nice to pull off. Moving on, Zoodiac Thoroughblade. I resolved his effect about 5 times, I believe, yesterday. So, yeah, that was pretty cool, I guess. I usually didn't draw into anything that well, but one time I did draw into Zoodiac Barrage, and that was really nice. Next up, we have 1 Zoodiac Ram, 2000 defense. This card really, like, all of my defensive plays involved Ram. He's an amazing wall, and he has a non-once per turn effect for the F.A.Z monster he's used for, which is during either player's turn when your opponent activates a trap card or effect that targets it, detach a material, and negate the activation. Cataroost, it does basically the same thing, but monster effects. If you have a monster effect that targets it, detach a material, negate the activation. Neither of these effects are once per turn. And, I mean, there is Ram's first effect, which, if it's destroyed by battle or card effect, target a zoo in your grave and special summon it. I really never had to set pass. I never got that bad of a hand. And Cataroost's first effect, I only used it for my overlay units that I had, for my dead F.A.Z overlay units in my grave, so I just put them back into my extra deck, and that was nice. I just wish he gave you a draw. Last of the Zoo monsters, Double Whiptail. I wanted to play it at 3, but frankly, it didn't come up enough, and I wasn't going to get rid of any of my other zoos to play 3. It's a great hand trap. You can really catch your opponent off guard, and I really made someone rage because I had a Tiger Mortar on the field with nothing except for Thoroughblade underneath. So Thoroughblade's at 1600 attack, so the Tiger Mortar had 16. I had a Whiptail in my hand, and a bunch of monsters in Yu-Gi-Oh! Have attack points between 1600 and 2800. So that's always really nice because they attacked into it. I activated Whiptail from my hand, their monster got banished, and they were not happy. So, next of the Zoo cards, we got Triple Barrage. This is the card that I was talking about that's easily the best card in the deck. It came in clutch so often, like at least twice a game, if I got it that often. This card saved me, honestly. Like, pop a face up, you could choose itself, you could choose a dead monster on your field, or, my personal favorite thing to do, you could choose your Toy Vendor. And Toy Vendor will get a search off of that. So that's always awesome, because you're going straight +1. Because you got your Barrage on your field, pop your Toy Vendor. Toy Vendor gets a search. Barrage gets a special summon. And I resolved that effect probably more times than I did Sanctum. And it was awesome. I absolutely love Barrage. This is a staple 3 of you cannot play less than 3, honestly. Like, you just can't play. You're doing something wrong if you're playing less than 3. So the last of the Zoo cards, we've got Double Zoodiac combo. Really nice card. It came in clutch one time, and it actually let me win that one time. So that was awesome because, basically, if you don't know what it does, which you should because it's Zoodiac, everybody knows what Zoodiacs do. Target a Zoo F.A.Z monster you control, attach a Zoodiac from your deck to that F.A.Z monster as F.A.Z material. I usually played this during the standby phase or the battle phase when I wanted to mess with my opponent. Like, my opponent was attacking into my Zoodiac that had nothing except for my Zoodiac Cataroost underneath it. So I activated combo, put a Ram underneath, and that's 3200 defense. Again, they weren't happy. Second effect is also absolutely amazing, because since the Zoodiac is basically an engine, and I'm not playing pure zoos where I can max out my entire extra deck, I've basically only got one copy of each Zoodiac monster, so combo helping me recycle is always really, really nice. And you get a free draw off of it too, so that's always cool. And for the miscellaneous cards, we've got one Gofu for Decode Talker, one Maxi because it's Maxi, one Ghost Ogre, which I'm considering removing and just straight up siding it so that I can play some more artifacts, because there's a really cool artifact quick play spell that I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called Artifact Ignition, but I believe that I'm going to cut my Ghost Ogre, or at least side my Ghost Ogre, and then like cut an instant fusion and probably cut my Owl and add 3 ignitions, because ignition is amazing. When I get my hands on some ignitions, I'll bring you up to date with the deck. So finally, last card in the deck, main deck, we got one Dark Hole. Alright, so let's move on to the extra deck, and so we'll save side deck for last. One Fright for Sabretooth. Summoned him one time, and it didn't go very well, because my Sabertooth got Dante'd. That was not fun. And I'm pretty surprised that anyone's playing Dante in 2018, considering he takes up your extra monster zone. So that was, ugh. And I got one sheep, so I'm only playing one target for instant fusion. That's why I'm seriously considering cutting instant fusion down to 2. Probably not 1 though, because he is level 5, which means I can use him as X.Y's material for my rank 5 X.Ys. So that's basically the only reason why I'm keeping at least 1 in my deck. Next we have one Kraken, which is a polymerization target, one of my main polymerization targets. Kraken did help me by messing with some of my opponents. I think the 6 Samurai player had something like that that really annoying level 1 tuner that like kept on specialing monsters when it's destroyed by card effect and sent to the grave. But Kraken doesn't destroy, it just like straight up picks it up, puts it in the grave, and you're good. So Kraken's awesome. Only downside is it can attack your opponent directly, but then again it can attack twice per battle phase. And on top of that, at the end of the battle phase, you can switch it into defense, and it's a 3k wall, so that's always nice. Last of the Frightfurs, got one Tiger. I made him, I believe, twice. The first time I got 2 pops, but I was mainly going in because I knew it was going to be lethal. They had like 2,000 or maybe like 1,900 life points left, and they had like a monster and a face down. I didn't want to risk it, so I summoned Tiger, popped 2. And the other time I popped 4, so that was really nice. So yeah, those are my Frightfurs. On to my rank 5s. So I've got one Artifact Durandal. This card was great, honestly. I love it so much. You can mess with your opponent so much. Like, if they have a card effect that like is going to murder you and like just destroy you, you can activate Durandal's effect, change the card effect to destroy one spell or trap card your opponent controls. And the only downside is it has to be a normal spell or a normal trap, so it can't be a quick play spell, but I don't think that matters that much. Same thing, it can be a monster effect. So I summoned Durandal 2 times, and both times I made my opponent hate their life. Because one of the times I activated his second effect, which you don't use as often, but they got a pretty crazy hand. They had a bunch of combo pieces, so I just said nope, made Durandal shuffle both of our hands back into our deck, and I drew 2 cards. I actually drew into a Dark Hole, so that was really nice, and I drew into a Ghost Ogre, so I don't really think that I could have gotten better. I mean, I could have gotten better draws, but at the time, the Ghost Ogre really helped. So yeah, Durandal, love him. I used to play him at 2, but I cut one out for Mrs. Radiant. Next, we have one number 61 Volcasaurus. This won me a game going against Dark Magicians. It was game 2, and actually I won the first game too, but it was actually pretty close. It was fun though. But so yeah, I originally had 2 artifacts on the field, and my opponent had a Dark Magician, Dark Apprentice or Apprentice Illusion Magician or something like that, and they had a Magician's Rod. So I used my 2 artifacts, swing it to Magician's Rod, swing it to Apprentice Illusion. And then main phase 2 overlaid into Volcasaurus, targeted their Dark Magician, destroyed it, dealt 2,700 points of damage to my opponent, and that was game. That was really fun to resolve though. Into my Zoodiacs, I'm playing double Tiger Mortar, and I actually am. I'm not even considering it. I'm like definitely going to swap a Tiger Mortar out for Chakanine, because I can't tell you how many times on my feet or how many times I hard summon Chakanine. So since I only have one Chakanine though, I can't pull off the, standard Chakanine Hammer Kong combo, where you go into Chakanine with a Hammer Kong underneath, then detach special Hammer Kong, then go into Tiger Mortar, and give Hammer Kong a unit. But, I'm definitely going to swap out a Tiger Mortar for Chakanine next chance I get, because I hard summon him, like, basically every other game. So, moving on, I've got one Hammer Kong. I only play him for the combo, which basically makes it so that my opponent can't target my Zoodiac monsters except for Hammer Kong, as long as he has material. And, but it kind of sucks because during the end phase, you have to detach one X.Y's material. But it's fine, though, because when Chakanine special summons Zoodiac from the grave, their effects are negated, which means that your Hammer Kong doesn't have to detach during the end phase. Next up, Borbo. This card also won me a game. This card, Borbo, gets no credit whatsoever. mainly because people use him just as a, as an F.A.Z starter. They start with Borbo and then go off from there. I usually don't do that, actually. Like, if I'm going for lethal, then I'll do Borbo last, because most people overlook an important aspect of Borbo, and that's that he can attack your opponent directly. That, I gamed, I believe, 3 people with Borbo alone. So that was really awesome. I love Borbo, personally, and he doesn't get as much credit as he deserves, and he needs a higher rarity. Just saying. Moving on, we got 1 Karen Gorgon, generic rank 4, and you can basically force your opponent to choose another target. Like, let's say your opponent's going to pop a spell or trap on your field, and you don't want them to pop that one, just activate Karen Gorgon, and make them retarget, and you get to choose a target. So I used Karen Gorgon 1 time, and I made my opponent target my artifact Sanctum, and off of Sanctum I special summoned Scythe, and then I got a pop off of Sanctum. So that was really fun, because they didn't read Karen Gorgon's effects straight, so that was nice. Moving on, 1 Mrs. Radiant, only made it 1 time. Mrs. Radiant doesn't come up that often, because personally I'd rather use my 2 Earth attributes, which most of the time, like 99% of the time, are going to be a Zoodiac and, say, Fluffal Dog. I'd rather use them to start my Zoodiac plays than make it Radiant, but I guess Radiant doesn't float, or Radiant does float, so that's always nice, that's always cool. But again, I'm mainly going to be going into my Zoos. The only exception I can think of with Radiant would be, let's say that you have for whatever reason, you have Fluffal Owl on your field, I guess, which I am going to be cutting eventually. So, if you have a Fluffal Owl on your field, then I completely understand going into Radiant. But, yeah, that's about it. Next, got 1 Decode, 1 Proxy. I hard summoned Decode Talker 2 times, I believe, and I summoned him off of Gofu 5 times. So that was awesome. So, moving on to my side deck. This is a side deck card that I'm definitely swapping out. I believe that when I get my 3 artifact ignitions, that I'm going to take this out and replace it with one of my artifacts, artifact Lancia. I'm only going to main deck 1 Lancia, probably, I guess, and I'll side deck another Lancia. So yeah, Ava, if you don't know what she does, it's pretty trashy. If it's sent if it's sent to the grave, so you can like discard it with Toy Vendor, I guess. You could banish up to 2 other light fairies from the field or grave, so that can be your artifacts or your Fluffal Wings. I actually never cited this in, but basically after you banish them and add the same number of level 2 or lower light fairies with different names from your deck to your hand, except for Ava. And it's a hard once per turn, but that doesn't matter because I'm only siding 1. And basically Ava's only target would be your Fluffal Wings. That's the only thing you can add to your hand, and it's pretty trashy, if I'm being honest. Moving on, I'm side decking 1 Beagle Talk, 1 Chakram. I cited Chakram in 1 time. I never cited Beagle Talk in. Beagle Talk is not very good in most situations, considering that he requires you to pop your back row. Like, it's not a choice. If you have back row, you're going to have to pop at least 1. You can pop up to 2, but, you know, it's pretty terrible if you've got other, back row that you want to keep, like Zoodiac Combo, because then you can't summon Beagle Talk, you just got to let your opponent kill him. But Chakram's actually really nice. I cited him in 1 time, and he saved my face down Zoodiac combo. It was actually originally a bluff, but I got a Chakram onto the field out of it. So basically, if you don't know what Chakram does, because not many people do, he was one of the first artifacts to come out, along with like Aegis, Achilles Shield, those artifacts basically. What Chakram does is, if your opponent activates a card or effect that would pop a spell or trap you control, I don't know if it can be face up, I believe. Or no, 1 set, while he's in your hand, you can bounce a set spell or trap to the hand and special summon him. So, just as an example, let's say your opponent activates MST, targets one of your face downs, and you don't want them to target the face down. You could activate Chakram's effect, bounce the face down back to your hand, and special summon Chakram from your hand. So you get a 2k defense wall, and you get your spell to be safe. So that's nice. Next towards the Zoodiac lineup, I've got 2 Bunny Blast. I'm not maining Bunny Blast mainly because of the stats, and the kind of irrelevant effect, it's not too good. It just if it's destroyed by battle or card effect, target a Zoodiac in your grave, except for Bunny Blast, add it to your hand. And it requires a spell or trap card effect that targets it, and not many of those exist. They're mostly going to be traps, like, for example, trap holes. Those target, so you can actually negate those using your using Ram, and monster effects, which are more dominant in targeting. So that's why I've got to play. That's basically why I'm playing my. I'm Cataroost, yeah. Next, we got one Whiptail, so yes, I'm siding a Whiptail. I usually only put Whiptail in if I'm dealing with a bunch of really weak monsters that my opponent has, but they're just swarming the field, basically. So I'll just Whiptail to banish them, gain more attack and stuff. So, yeah, Whiptail, siding one, not too good. Moving on, I've got 3 Kaijus. Let's just pretend that these 3 are all humongous, because, frankly, I'm too cheap to buy Gamma Seal, or Gameciel, however you want to pronounce it. I'm too cheap to buy Gameciel. So I'm sticking with Humongous. Plus, I like Humongous more in general, because his defense isn't 3,000 for one thing, so, like, if, for whatever reason, the Gameciel survives, your opponent can't, switch it into defense position and have a 3k wall. And 2,400 attack, that's still pretty weak. I can get over it with basically any of my extra deck monsters, or I have some way to remove it from the field. Next up, I've got one Frightful Reborn. I'm definitely siding this out, or cutting this entirely from my side deck for Godarla. So I'll play 3 Humongous, 1 Godarla. But basically, Frightful Reborn, it's pretty terrible. Super situational, because you have to have the poly. I never sided this in, and I don't think I'm ever going to. But I did side in all 3 Kaijus for like 3 or 4 games. So next I've got Triple System Down for the ABC, which are a massive pain. I didn't go against ABC, but there was a Mechalord player, and I was really hoping that I'd get to go against him so that I could side System Down in, but I didn't get to. Alright, next got 1 Floodgate Trap Hole and 1 Bottomless Trap Hole. So, yeah, those are just for dealing with monsters that don't really have protection, but they got massive stats. So, yeah, that's basically my deck profile on my F.A.Z deck, or F.A.Z as I prefer to call it. And I hope that you guys like it. So, yeah, and if you know any cards that I could side against Spirals, at least until they die, that'd be pretty nice. So comment down below. And, yeah, I will see you guys in my next video, and thank you. Like, subscribe, do all that stuff. See ya.